eyes are all allergied the fuck out. In fact, I should take an allergy pill. Is this an allergy pill? That is not allergy pills. Give me one moment. I gotta take an allergy pill. My eyes are fucked up. Oh, shit. Oh, can you grab those ones for me, lady? Wait, maybe I can reach them. What ones? Those ones right there. No. Nope, not that. What were they? Damn. I just saw my face on the camera and I'm like, my eyes are fucked. What dog trazodone? Shit.
I'll open the other thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know where my allergy pills are at, but I'm allergied up. Let's see, tilt that up a bit. Oh, my hair's all messed up. Hello, 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 hello. So today, for the most part, I'm gonna be watching, pardon me, giving my thoughts on a documentary that my mod Elkenstein has asked me to watch. And I told him yes, and that was a long time ago, so it's way overdue. I do have the permission of the creator of the documentary to watch it on stream. That was important to me, not just to like cover my ass, but if I really liked and respected them, then I assume that they deserve at least some of my respect in asking them first. I ain't no XQC kind of reactor. Elk, I reached out to you on Discord. Could I get the link for that video again? Because it is buried in our DMs, and I have no fucking idea at all. But before I get into that, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. So one is, I wanted to give like a post Dr. James Cantor, Mr. Girl interview, watch party rundown. It seemed pretty clear that the guy who studies it the most in the entire world says that there's literally no reason whatsoever to be concerned about people watching Lolly. That there's zero evidence that he sees that it would result in any increase in child abuse. So people that are saying otherwise are just having an emotional reaction. They might think that there's like a logical reason there, but it does not bear out as far as we can tell. There's not studies on this, so we have to go based on like expert observation, and this is what we got. Which sort of furthers my position of like I don't give a shit if people do it. I don't care. I do plan on talking to Ice Beans about that in the future. I know Ice Beans watched it, and we chatted a little bit beforehand. And me talking to Ice Beans was one of the things that motivated me to have that watch party. It was good. It was cool to see some of the people in my community face for the first time. Might do something like that in the near future. Something a little bit more light, like might just like stream a movie or something. Because I thought, at least myself, and it seems like the people that are in there had a good time. So it's something I want to recreate in the future, but with like the lighter tone. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? There was something else I wanted to talk about before the documentary. Big time. Or at least it seemed like it was important to me. Oh, yeah. Mr. Grill put out I guess like a video. I thought it was like a video, just like a video on Substack. I guess he wrote it too, but about what's his name? James, the guy that killed himself. Oh shit. Well, I already said it. Whatever. James, is it Somerton? I want to say it wrong. James. Yeah, James Somerton. Yeah. I don't think it is appropriate to blame H Bomber Guy, but I think it is appropriate to critique society in general. Whenever you have somebody who has as many resources as James Somerton does, kills themselves, I think it serves as a reminder to all of us that we're really not doing enough to make sure that everybody who needs mental health services gets them. I think that there's a lot of stigma, no matter what, no matter how much like we have done as far as we have come. There is a lot of stigma around it. I think that for some people it's cost. For some people like James Somerton, obviously it's not cost, but there's a reason why he didn't reach out to mental health professional instead. And I think that's like all of us are to blame. I don't think it's fair to say that if somebody holds you accountable and people get unduly upset with you, that it is their fault. Um, I do think we can act better, certainly. However, you shouldn't be like one really really bad day away from ending your life at any point. And if we're gonna point the finger at anybody, I think we need to point it at ourselves. Because I also don't think we get anywhere by saying, "Hey, this person is the reason that it happened." When if we all did a better job of promoting mental health, like how many people are online every day in this space and they talk about policy and all that. Uh, I don't know of anybody who increasing mental health spending is like their number one position, and we could all 100% be doing more. And I just think that it's probably a good idea for us to take some accountability onto ourselves for what we're not doing for things like that, instead of saying this guy made a video and his community got like out of hand. Um, because like basically we live in an age where that kind of thing is gonna keep happening no matter what. And if we actually care about solving the problem, we have to make sure that people are getting mental health treatment when they need it. It seems like it's that simple to me. Because we can talk about like the online communities and how that works, but famous people have really bad days where they're getting held accountable for things and that are career ending, and there's not going to be any one community responsible for the kind of responses that they're going to get. They're going to be really bad. Um, so I feel like everybody's looking for like an individual or like a thing to blame, but it seems kind of crazy to me to use the opportunity to sling shit instead of just figuring out what maybe we should have been doing more and try to rise to the occasion moving forward. It just seems kind of childish to me to do the finger waving. There was a guy, Peter Coffin, blamed H Bomber guy directly. It's like if anybody marched James Somerton to his grave, it was H Bomber guy. And then Kid Not Kin said to him on Twitter, if anybody, like in response to that, if anybody marched James Somerton to his grave, it was James Somerton. And I'm like, this is like a half a step above blaming H Bomber guy. It's like I don't really blame anybody for making that decision, like because they're not really making that decision. They're not in the right state of mind. But like, there's always going to be people around people. We could do a better job at pushing people to get treatment, helping people accomplish getting treatment and stuff. Because I don't think that it was just all of a sudden he was just like super depressed and all that. Um, a lot of people abandoned him, and I think that if you're gonna abandon people when they're in really dark times because they made you feel bad too, then you should probably be leaving on terms that make sure that other person's okay still. I think it's just fucked up. And I think that Mr. Girl's video on it was thoughtful and all that, but I really wish he would have had some of that like individual accounting that I think we all need to do whenever uh, something like that happens. Because I guess I can't think of a single reason why every single person who heard about it couldn't have done something more at some point to make the mental health situation in the country better. That's it. I don't want to get too crazy with it, but that's all I can ever think when I see people pointing fingers is that I don't know how much I've really done lately to prevent like our country as a whole's mental health crisis from getting worse. And it's probably something that's gonna just require everybody to do something about. like even it doesn't have to be like donating or anything, but if everybody sort of was a bit more aware and they talked a bit more about it in a positive way, um, it would change things. That's really all it takes. If everybody's just sort of voiced a supportive voice towards people getting mental health help when they need it, we would shift how we view it. We would shift how we fund it. It would become a more important thing. And it's one of the few things that I think that we could probably actually do something about just by talking about it more collectively. But it's also one of those things where people feel like you're not supposed to talk about it. Even if you want to do something about it, like it's bad to talk about because it makes people feel uncomfortable. Like I just think good, make people feel uncomfortable. They should be uncomfortable about it. They should be uncomfortable enough about it to talk about it. But I don't think that it's good or smart to encourage people to not just sort of live their lives how they normally would. In H Bomber Guy's case, it's making a video about something that he thinks was bad. All right, Elk, I got this. I got the link. I'm gonna pull it up. Oh my God, I thought it was 3 hours long. It's even longer than that. um, yeah. So while I did really enjoy Mr. Girl's video, it did kind of fall short for me because of that. I gotta put this on the other monitor. Oh wait, I can't. I need to get my other monitors up, and it's killing me. It does have to be on this monitor. I really need my third one. It'll be the death of me. Um, oh, also, if you didn't see it, Tuna Chip did an episode of his podcast for Childhood Sucks with Mr. Girl. There is a VOD available on Kick. If you go to his Kick, the VOD is up there. So that's pretty cool. I recommend hitting it on the Kick VOD before it gets uploaded to YouTube because it's going to be, there's just going to have to be some edits for the sake of TOS. And I think it's better in its raw form. Okay, so this documentary is called The Transcendental Object at the End of Time by Terence McKenna. And hopefully YouTube doesn't strike me for it. If YouTube does, at least I know I can get the strike removed because I do have permission from the creator. The only thing I really know about it going in is that it's about psychedelics. And so I assume that I'll be talking about my own experiences too. Oh boy. A time wave theory. Perhaps the most peculiar idea of Terence McKenna is not discussed separately in the following hours, but is referred to many times. The time wave is a variable wave scaled against time. What this is measuring is the ebb and flow of novelty and habit. In every stimulation, whether it lasts a millisecond or a billion years, the struggle between these two tendencies of the universe cannot be discerned. I believe the idea of fluctuations in time and the idea of an attractor that is somehow directing or calling the world towards a consequence are both concepts worth dealing with, if only for their poetic value. Well, it feels necessary to discover the existence of the fractal imprint of the transcendental object that dwells inside each of us to fully appreciate the implications of meeting it on a larger scale. As above, so below. Interesting. Popcorn. Man, that does sound good. Not gonna lie. Oh man, my allergies are just off the charts tonight. So I will do my best to get through this whole thing. Oh my God. I probably will comment slightly less than normal just for the sake of like, if I comment like normal, this will easily be a 7-hour stream. As I tend to double the runtime of a video. Oh, it would be impossible to list the many people whose work is featured or those involved in creating original videos and sound recordings spanning over 30 years, but I'd like to thank some of the contributors. Kindly ask any artists who recognize their work to mention it in the comments. Okay, and then they are there. There's some recommended books for you. If you ever want a book on like just like the transcendental, highly recommend the Albigan Papers by Richard Rose. I think it altered the way I think about a lot of things forever for the pineal gland igniters. Oh boy. If you don't know, the pineal gland is it's like the crown chakra. And it's also the thing that's responsible for the production of DMT that leads to dreams, which I assume is what he's getting at. Oh God. I didn't even do it. Sorry, my allergies are so bad. You're right. I'm just dumb. There we go. Nope, I didn't show it. I wasn't showing it. But I read what was on there. At least. He's had those book links somewhere. You'll have to remind me again. And I will. Oh, hold up. Gotta shrink this. Ugh. And then resize it. I didn't realize I wasn't in full scale. There we are. Beautiful.
Basically, the idea is to push people toward imagining what they've never imagined and feeling what they've never felt before.
The incontrovertible evidence of the presence of the transcendental in our lives. That's what I was seeking, never dreaming that I would find it. I have to wonder if this is about, just like straight up about DMT. I'm certainly going to end up talking about my experience with it at some point in this. But that's several things already have made me think about DMT and what that experience is like.
He's an old friend of all of ours, so I'd like you all to welcome Timothy Leary. Yeah.
I know that name.
I, for one,
Something
am overjoyed to be here. This is one of those special evenings that we will all treasure. Terence McKenna means a great deal to me. I would say he's one of the 5 or 6 most important people on the planet. I can't even think of any others. Short-term memory loss, but... Terence and I keep meeting in the most wonderful, mythic, adventurous places. I was doing a wild tour through Germany about a year ago. We came to Heidelberg, and we were being guested by some people that came right out of Hermann Hesse. I mean, wizards and gnomes and, that sort of thing. Heidelberg. And there was Terence McKenna, and it was just so perfectly Hesse, Journey to the East. Yeah. So we meet again here tonight. I was talking to Terence backstage before we began, and we both agree that what he will be saying tonight has been said over and over again at all those high moments in human history when those who have gone within and understood about the brain and the inner treasures, we all come back and...
Timothy Leary is MIT psychedelic explorer. I don't know what that other word is in academic. Okay.
Pretty much say the same thing. The problem is, though, that once you say it, you can't go on saying it and saying it and saying it. And when Terence came along a few years ago and was saying what I'd been trying to say, but naturally better, upgraded, up to date, I was so overwhelmed with gratitude, and I publicly thank you for that, Terence. By the way, the role that Terence is playing right now is one that takes not only vision, but it also takes fucking courage.
Sure.
We were saying backstage that Terence and I are a small group of philosophers who make our living not in the ivory tower, if you call it living, but just speaking it, chanting it, raving it, ranting it, and no one has ever done it with more poetry and elegance than the speaker tonight. I'm going to say one more thing, and then we will have what we've all been waiting for. Terence reminds us that all human wisdom, all energy comes from our beloved synergetic partners, the vegetable queendom. It all comes from the plants. Now, round of applause to the vegetables.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. I appreciate that a lot.
Now, we all know that the human body, we have to have food. It comes from vegetables. We have used vegetables over the years, the essence of vegetables in the form of wood to develop fire, gas, oil, and so forth. But what we forget and what we look to Terence for tonight is to be reminded that plants have given us an even more important gift. They give us the gift of vision. They give us the illumination. And throughout human history, there are the Eves and the Pandoras. Usually it's a woman who takes this wonderful vegetable and gives it to humanity and says, be illuminated. And now, for our illumination and our pleasure, please join me in welcoming Terence McKenna.
You know, I get a lot of vibes from what he's saying from really similarly to I met a guy who everybody but him called himself a shaman, and he would talk about plants as though they had very distinct personalities, like they're people. The herb tree, I love that. He smoked like all natural cigarettes, but he always talked about tobacco like a really arrogant and like cocky guy, kind of. I always thought it was very, very interesting. He's one of the few people that I haven't spoken to in like over 10 years that I'd say maybe 3 or 4 times a year I try to see if I can find him online or something. He's a very interesting, very cool guy.
Good job.
I would also call him the shaman too.
Well, I want to thank Tim. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm sure I know I wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't
it's
for
just the
Tim
guy that
Leary.
I knew.
He was
His name is
the
Todd.
pathfinder. He cut the way through the woods. He gave us all permission to be very much the people that we are tonight. And it's wonderful that one Irishman can hand it on to another and that we can keep it in the bardic tradition. Wonderful. I can hardly believe I'm here. I made it past the Camaro raffle. I survived the offer for reconstructive cosmetic surgery. And I've had my smart drugs for this evening, so glad to be here. Well, until a few minutes ago, I thought that this was a 45-minute gig, so you get to see grace under pressure this evening. Actually, I'm kidding. It doesn't matter how long it goes. We could never get to the bottom of this stuff. Nor would we wish to, I think. By coincidence, merely, I became 45 yesterday. So, sort of a good moment to do some summing up. So in thinking about this talk and knowing as I did who would be here, I thought that I would sort of orient the theme toward distilling the psychedelic mind,
Okay.
which is a way of talking about the psychedelic mind, but also trying to, considering the amount of money you paid for this session, give you the entire shtick in one fell swoop, so that you would never have to attend a Terence McKenna lecture or workshop again. You could just move past that, turn the page on that kind of thing in your life.
With me in the studio is Terence McKenna, author,
Interesting.
lecturer, explorer, and philosopher. Terence is the co-author with his brother Dennis McKenna of a book called The Invisible Landscape, Mind, Hallucinogens, and the I Ching. He's also the co-author of Psilocybin, Magic Mushroom Grower's Guide. He is the author of a computer program called Timewave Zero, and he's the co-founder and president of an organization called Botanical Dimensions, which devotes itself to saving botanical plants used in shamanistic traditions throughout the world. Welcome, Terence.
I had the shaman thing right. I'm curious, Elk, you're the reason we're watching this. So I have a question for you. Have you ever read the Teachings of Don Juan or any of the sequels by Carlos Casentia? I'm a very, very big fan of that
Pleasure
book
to be
series.
here.
It's a pleasure.
Also, this guy has very rare, super big eyeballs like me.
To have you here.
Hey, what? All they do is introduce him.
Well, I think the most profound
Very
cultural
cool.
development is it is possible to make the case that language itself is an ability
And I assume you're a fan.
that was coaxed out of an evolving primate species by virtue of the fact that there were hallucinogenic
No, but it's very famous. Oh, you haven't? Oh, it's they're quite
plants
good.
in the diet of that creature. You see, psilocybin has been shown in low doses to actually increase visual acuity. Well, at the stage of evolution where human beings encountered psilocybin mushrooms, we were essentially baboon-like pack-hunting hordes of veldt-living creatures in Africa. In that situation, a compound which increases visual acuity will give a tremendous adaptive advantage to the animals that are including it in their diet. And those animals not including it in their diet will be quickly eliminated by the process of natural selection from the evolutionary scenario.
I was asking if you're a fan of the Carlos Casentia books.
So it's possible to argue that this mind manifesting quality of the psychedelics actually conferred an evolutionary advantage on certain primates who then were able to bootstrap themselves to higher and higher states of reflective self-awareness. This may lie behind the very early coincidence of cattle, goddesses, and mushrooms in the apparent obsessions of early man as reflected by the cave paintings on the Algerian plateau and in southern France and Spain. We always
I've heard quite a few people talk about mushrooms, like psychedelic mushrooms, being a part of human evolution, but I've never heard anybody explain that so like I've heard that like chimps or whatever ape that we ultimately descended from would have had them and it would have been a part of our evolutionary process, but I've never heard anybody explaining it in the which it has to be the most coherent explanation that would have given them a better ability of sight, which would be ridiculous the huge advantage if it's like you know, kill to survive, or be able to run to survive. That's why does anybody else say that? That's crazy. That's really weird.
find the notion
Oh my gosh. Let me Let me mute myself here. There's all kinds of stuff happening. Oh yeah, I also wanted to say that I don't know how many people you ever looked into this kind of thing, but there's a ton of references to mushrooms in the Bible too. Very, very interesting the amount of references there are to mushrooms in the Bible, and some people even think that Jesus is an allegory for a mushroom as well, which is weird. Froggy Style, thank you very much for the gift of memberships. I appreciate you always, dude. You're too fucking cool. He does rock. My wife just telling me yesterday, like Froggy Style is like, I don't know what she said. She sang your praises. I'll give you that. All right, I'm gonna mute myself during the next part of the video because it's a little loud here. But again, and as always, thank you very, very much, Froggy. Yeah.
Of the mystery circa 18,000 years ago connected with the idea of cattle, and we always find the cattle connected with the notion of the great goddess. Now it may
Elk donating $5 to shout out Froggy Style. We're not the biggest community out there, but damn it, we're a good fucking community. I'd take a minute since Elk cited a $5 shout out Froggy Style. Big C, he's an admin in the Discord and a pretty good friend of mine at this point. He came and talked in the Discord and the text chat for about 2 hours, and me and a bunch of other people were all talking. He said he's never been in a single Discord where every single person that was like debating with each other all ceded ground at some point to somebody else. Like, this is a good community because we're all willing to listen and we're all willing to be wrong. And I think that as we slowly build up and grow, that's going to be a really strong point to this community, is that we're actually open-minded and we really do listen when other people are talking. So, and in this instance, willing to give love to one another. This is very inspiring. Thank you guys. Very, very cool.
may be that the hidden and third member of this trinity was a hallucinogenic mushroom of some sort.
We've got only about 2 minutes left, but I wonder what the connection. I don't quite
He did make a biblical reference. How about that? Oh, thank you.
see it between the mushroom, the cattle, and the goddess.
The mushrooms grow in the manure of the cattle. When the hunting packs of early primates followed along behind the cattle, they inevitably encountered the mushroom, ate it, had their visual skills thereby increased, bred more readily, therefore, and survived more easily than their non-mushroom eating cousins. And so the eating of mushrooms and the development of higher aspects of consciousness, including self-reflection, were thereby enforced, leading to the conclusion.
Saxon, thank you very much for gifting a membership. That's really funny that you're the one that ended up getting gifted. That's really, really funny. But thank you very, very much. I absolutely appreciate it. Wow, the psychedelic documentary stream is going very well.
That it was
Appreciate
actually
you, buddy.
a
Thank you.
symbiotic relationship between early primates and these hallucinogenic plants that laid the basis for the appearance of what we call human beings.
Well, Terence McKenna, this is a very interesting discussion. You seem to be suggesting that our evolution, I suppose, from the animal kingdom into the human kingdom itself was catalyzed or triggered by our encounter with these hallucinogenics. And
Yes, we are an ape with a symbiotic relationship to a mushroom, and that has given us self-reflection, language, religion, and all the spectrum of effects that flow from these things.
yeah, and one can only wonder how these hallucinogens might affect our future evolution as well.
They have brought us to this point, and as we make our relationship to them conscious, we may be able to take control of our future evolutionary path.
this is that I'm not rhyming for the sake of Ritalin. That's funny. There was this idea that Aldous Huxley, the author of A Brave New World and then later A Brave New World Revisited, which was a nonfiction book, had about psychedelics, and he said that in the future people will not discuss what kind of car they drive or what kind of house they have or what job they have, but rather that they will be discussing which chemicals they're using to turn on or shut off different aspects of their consciousness. And it seemed to be a growing idea amongst intellectuals, that this would be a really big part of the future. This was like back in like the 50s and 60s era. But it seemed like we as a whole got less interested in these kinds of paths. And I think it's really odd that we took such a sharp turn because we found so much new when we started looking into it. Obviously, I think like the crushing of the hippie movement probably contributed to that a lot. But I think about that a lot, and I think about how we might not be where we're at if we had investigated that a little bit more. Oh, Saxon, thank you. You gifted a sub in Twitch as well. And you have my hat's off to you for me to take off my hat, but I guess I'll take off my headphones for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Why no kickstream? Well, one, I do appreciate the sentiment. I can't get money out there yet. However, I just have to rebuy my Restream. I ran out of my Restream subscription. Things are a little tight at the moment. I'm driving 2 hours a day to get my wife back and forth to work. Oh, well, thank you. And if there really is more stuff about the UK Royal Mail scandal, I do want to get into that eventually. That was way more interesting than I expected it to be. Alchemy. It's not something I hear
In the
too often.
120 years from 1500 to the beginning of the 30 Years' War, Europe was caught in a number of conspiracies and political intrigues directed toward moving Europe toward a magical and alchemically based society. The Protestant princes of the Northern League of Germany, especially Frederick the Elector Palatine, came to culminate this movement, but its roots lie further back in the 1580s of the 16th century. It was in this period that the English astrologer, astronomer, mathematician, navigator, and expert of espionage, John Dee, launched his famous and mysterious mission to Bohemia, a little-known incident in European history which holds clues to understanding the fate and evolution of modern science and the nature of a lost world of magical and alchemical thinking that once claimed the attention of the European imagination. John Dee, the greatest mind of the Elizabethan era, friend of Queen Elizabeth, colleague of Sir Philip Sidney, converser with angels, mathematician par excellence, determined, under the influence of the mysterious Edward Kelly, that he was to be the center of an alchemical renaissance and a secret society that would lay the groundwork for the continuation of the dream of Astrea, the dream built around the Elizabethan Queen Elizabeth I.
Very rare. I actually don't know for sure which secret society he's talking about. I know about quite a lot of them from Europe, like the earlier ones and stuff. All right, Elk. This has gone in a lot of direction, but you got my interest. This is it's a good video.
He associated himself intensely with the Arthurian mythical and mystical side of the Elizabethan idea of British Empire.
He was a Welshman. Like the Queen, he was so intensely devoted to, and like her, he shared the Renaissance mood of Saturnian melancholy. A collector of books, a builder of scientific instruments, a composer of codes and ciphers, fascinated with alchemy, Dee was both the figure of the introspective melancholic and the world-planning, empire-building political visionary. Dee was under the patronage of the Earl of Northumberland, and it was Northumberland who looted the Catholic monasteries at the time of Henry VIII. We have reason to believe that John Dee had virtual carte blanche in selecting manuscripts from those libraries that interested him. Not only was Dee a scholar of the classics and the magical past, but he was an intimate friend with some of the great movers and shakers of his own time, particularly Sir Philip Sidney and the entire coterie of poets and artists who had gathered themselves around Elizabeth, Astrea, to celebrate her reign and to make of her the paradigmatic sovereign of Europe that Dee believed led the way toward the establishing of a universal alchemical monarchy. It was essentially a poetic enterprise, as alchemy always is. Merlin, in the Arthurian legends, has come down to us basically disguised as John Dee. The image we have of Merlin is Dee's image. So Dee possessed an enormous power over the imagination of his contemporaries. They were in awe of his learning.
Perhaps we are the naive ones. Perhaps we too quickly assumed that we had understood all there was to know about matter. After all, even to this moment, we cannot locate the seat of the imagination in matter. We cannot trace the evolution of a human thought or hope in matter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me one moment. I forgot about it. My eyes are still quite fucked. My wife said she was going to look for my allergy medicine in another spot, and she never got back with me. I'm going to ask her real quick about that. But I don't want to miss this.
It's almost as though the alchemists, through their humility, had a deeper insight into the workings of the world than we have achieved today. This is ground zero for the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. Standing here in the alchemical laboratory of the palace in Heidelberg, we are essentially at the center of the alchemical hopes of the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. It was here in the years before the adventure in Bohemia that Frederick's alchemists, astrologers, and soothsayers toiled directly under the king's observation and control. Here came Michael Meyer, Heinrich Kundrath, the great names of alchemy. It's entirely possible that John Dee was in this room.
It's entirely possible that Edward Kelly stood where I am standing now. It's almost impossible to conceive of the hopes and the fantasies and the labors and the dreams that have been generated by and are centered on this room and the objects.
This is wild. This movie has like a lot of the greatest hits of things that I've looked into when I was younger. Very coincidental.
This is the last alchemical laboratory in the world to fully function before the rise of modern science. And these tools in many ways reflect the internal cosmology of the men and women who used them. This, for example, a typical alchemical distillery, is called the Pelican. Another example of the colorful nature of alchemical vocabulary. It's called the Pelican because it is associated with the myth of a bird which plucks blood from its own breast. The prima materia, feces, black coal, charcoal, salt niter, heated in here, brought to a high temperature, a fevered caloric state, rises into the higher empyreum of the vessel, and there, rarefied, it condenses, liquefies, and flows down into the cooler domain of the child of the pelican. Here the essence is collected, the quintessence, and always the hope was that the next experiment, the next combination of materials would yield the elixir vitae, the lapis philosophorum, the completion that the alchemist sought. And so all this fantastic apparatus that we see around us is really not so much in the service of channeling liquids, gases, but in the service of channeling spirit out of matter and into the higher realms, where it then can be refluxed, recondensed, and the lapis philosophorum, the stone of the philosophers, the central mystery, brought to completion.
Interesting. I don't think he is speaking to freak people out, but I think he speaks with a sort of solemnness that reflects the depth of what he's speaking about.
The transformation of matter into a universal panacea for the redemption of mankind. This was Dee's great passion. This was the overarching theme of his life, a deep, deep commitment to the reformation of society, and a deep, deep exhaustion and rejection of the values of Christendom that he saw betrayed all about him. And then by distillation, and then by coagulation, and then by concentration through firing, the alchemical body is brought to completion. These are processes that go on both within the chemical retort, the alembic, in the alchemist's laboratory, and they are processes which go on in the heart and mind of the alchemist. One process dissolves, another process separates the dross, the gross matter, from the precious. Another concentrates the subtle essence. Another raises the subtle essence to another level of refinement. And over time,
charging battery.
Great friend of the alchemist, this process of rarefaction and growth, both metallic and psychological, both internal and external, both personal and impersonal,
proceeds and feeds upon itself, and eventually, not through any logic discernible to the scientific mind, there is a kind of miracle, the production of the stone, the union of spirit and matter, the fusion of these two contradictory aspects of the universe into a new and third thing. The quintessence, the rubedo, the lapis philosophorum, the aqua vitae, the nostre lapis philosophorum vivice.
Shit, my bad. This is just a lot of noise over here. I was just reading what you had said, Elk. When I first read the metal into gold, I was gonna add that it was also sought after as a means of seeking immortality. So yeah, whenever you read about in alchemical terms, the philosopher's stone, it's always in reference to achieving immortality or into making like lead or silver or like mercury into gold. These were always like the prime like directives of alchemy.
One of the most famous of all alchemical axioms.
Oh, and I also
is,
said, hey, howdy,
as above, so below. Meaning always that in every small part of reality, there is a tiny reflection of the great overstructure of reality. And in the largest structures are hidden the secrets of the smallest, and vice versa. We have unconsciously imbibed the ontology of science, where we have mind firmly separated out from the world.
Oh boy.
But in an earlier age, mind and matter were seen to be alloyed together throughout nature. And I think it's very interesting that at this very high-tech moment in our adventure, the plants return and almost stand before us as a beacon and a promise. They stand for absolute Tao. They stand for the correct way for life to relate to its environment.
I like that.
This is one of the most interesting new psychedelics in the world. This is Salvia divinorum, and it is definitely one of the plants which will shape the next few decades of the new millennium.
I've never done salvia.
This is a
by
coleus.
choice.
It's ironic that these plants, which have been in our kitchens and in our windowsill flower beds for generations, turn out to contain psychoactive compounds as powerful as any known to science.
What is it?
These are not particularly interesting in terms of drugs, but they're certainly bizarre. I'm up here. We may.
Wait, what was that second one?
This is one of the most interesting plants in the garden. This is Psychotria viridis. It is numerous. It's ironic. This is a coleus. It's ironic that these plants, which have been in our kitchen.
One more time. COL.
It's ironic that flower beds for generations turn out to contain psychoactive compounds as powerful as any known to science. These are not particularly interesting in terms of drugs, but they're certainly bizarre. I'm up here with me. This is one of the most interesting plants in the garden. This is Psychotria viridis. This is the plant which causes the vision. When taken with ayahuasca, when taken as a liquid, the experience lasts about 4 to 6 hours. It's not as intense as smoking it. Smoking it is the most intense experience this side of the yawning grave. When I take psychedelics, I always do it in a shamanic style. Usually at night, usually alone, in nature if possible, and then I watch. I pay very close attention. I use my mind as an alchemical vessel for carrying out observations on the union of spirit, my personality, and matter, the physical matter of the substance that I'm ingesting.
I've always approached psychedelics with the mindset of it's either to look inward to discover something about the self or to look outwards to get a better understanding of how do I put this, like the more unusual design of nature. Probably a good way to put it, the last scene. So either like looking inward or looking broadly outward. And I usually do prefer to do it by myself.
Building on Western
very few people.
psychotherapy as elaborated by
Never as a
Freud
party
and
thing.
Jung, one view of what psychedelics are is it's the part of your mind that you'd rather not do business with. It's the memories of childhood neglect or abuse. It's repressed kinky fantasies. It's, in other words, the Freudian idea of the unconscious, that somehow these are drugs which dissolve the boundary between conscious and unconscious mind, and then you can do accelerated psychotherapy because resistances have been pharmacologically overcome. That's one model. It's good as far as it goes. It just doesn't go far enough. Then there's another model, which I would call the traditional or shamanic model. And it says the cosmos is a series of levels, and these levels are connected by vertical routes of access, which can be thought of as simply flights through space or magical trees or magical ladders. Anyway, there's an image of ascent. And ordinary people exist on only one of these levels. But a shaman is not an ordinary person. A shaman is a superhuman person who has the power of animal allies behind them, and they can go up and down in these elevators that move between levels, and they can therefore recover lost souls, see social hanky-panky, theft and adultery, see the causes behind that, see the causes behind disease, so forth and so on. That would be the traditional one. Well, thinking about this from a mathematician's point of view, an all-encompassing explanation that would explain how all these magical feats are done is simply to suppose that the shaman is somehow able to project his consciousness, his or her consciousness, into a higher dimension. Not metaphorically, as in Sylvester Stallone has many dimensions, not metaphorically, but literally, as in 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and 4. And I have noticed that all of biology, not simply shamanism within the context of human society, but all of biology is, in a sense, a conquest of dimensionality. That as we ascend the phylogeny of organic life, what animals are a strategy for conquering space-time. And complex animals do it better than simpler animals. And we do it better than any complex animal. And we 20th century people do it better than any people in any previous century, because we can bind data in so many ways that they couldn't, electronically, on film, on tape, so forth and so on. Because what culture provides is a bunch of...
Man, this guy's face keeps changing on me. It's really throwing me off.
...rules, so you don't have to think, and a bunch of myths, so you don't have to think again. Culture has all the answers, you know. You want to know where people came from? Well, when the sky god got out of his canoe at first waterfall and took a leak, then we, the true people, appeared like ants, and we've been living here ever since. Oh, huh. Gee, thanks. I'm glad I asked. You know, this is what culture does for you. So, but now technology throws a curve. And the curve is that we live so long that we figure out what a scam this is. We figure out that what you're supposed to work for isn't worth having. We figure out that our politicians are buffoons. We figure out that professional scientists are reputation-building, grab-tailing weasels. We discover that all organizations are corrupted.
Yeah, I caught that. It's just so jarring when his face changes so much. Like he really has like many different faces for the same guy.
By ambition, you know, you get the picture. We figure it out. Well,
That's
then as intellectuals, and anybody who figures it out is an intellectual, believe me, because they're slinging the programming to push you the other way. So then intellectuals, defined as people who figure it out, discover that you are alienated. That's what figuring it out means. It means you understand that the BMW, the Harvard degree, whatever it is, that this is all baloney and manipulated and hyped, and that mostly you have a bunch of clueless people who are figuring out which fork they should use. Culture, and this is my message to artists and to anybody else who cares to notice, culture is a plot against the expansion of consciousness. And this plot prosecutes its goals through a limiting of language. Language is the battleground over which the fight will take place, because what we cannot say, we cannot communicate, and by say I mean dance, paint, sing, meme. What we cannot say, we cannot communicate. We can conceive of things that we cannot communicate. And I think every one of us here has done that. And that's a thrilling thing. That is the deep homework. The psychedelic inner astronaut sees things which no human being has ever seen before, and no human being will ever see again. But in fact, this has no meaning unless it is possible to carry it back into the collectivity.
Yeah, I think that after I did DMT, it probably took me years to be able to accurately relay what I could recall of it. It was pretty wild. I remember like the first like 20 minutes coming back, I just kept starting to speak and then stopping because I knew that no matter what I said, I would have I would just do such a poor job of trying to explain that which I was trying to get across. But I still think that it was really important, really big, meaningful experience that I had in my life.
The only way out of this, I think, is it takes courage because you have to turn your back on your culture in the most profound sense there is, because there are many ways to turn your back on your culture. I mean, if everyone's wearing gray, you can wear green. That's one way to turn your back on a culture. But another way is to break its laws. Now that's a little more serious and, brings in big philosophical issues. But in fact, the culture is an enormous arrow pointing, go this way. And you know what lies that way? Impoverishment, madness, degradation, and death. That's where the culture is pointing. You can see it. You can see it. Just look where we're headed. If everyone on earth aspires to the kind of lifestyle that you people can...
And you probably still haven't figured out what you've experienced yet, even if it was clearly profound. What do you think about that? Well, there's certainly going to be a sense of mystery about it. As the first time I did it was the only time, well, first time I did it, I didn't have enough, and I essentially went nowhere. The second time I did very obviously went somewhere. And the third time, again, I just didn't have, well, I think I did have enough, but I missed when if you smoke it, it goes from like a crystal and very quickly from a liquid to a gas. It just sort of poofs, and I missed that poof. And I like lost all the smoke. But the second time, I think I understand what I can of it, but I think that I'd have to go there a few more times to get a better handle.
Enjoy by virtue of having paid the money to be at a scene like this. There isn't enough glass, metal, and plastic in the planet to make that many celicas and jaguars and bluebirds and snowbirds and all the rest of this crap. So what is needed is an awakening. For me, at about the hour and 20-minute mark, give or take, not more than 5 minutes, it begins what's called streaming. Streaming is when you close your eyes and there are after-image colored globs of stuff floating.
Just as I was just curious. Elk, have you ever had the fire Garrick Amanita muscaria mushroom, like the Alice in Wonderland ones? Oh, what's this? Like the Mario ones. One time I had an enormously big bag of them, and I was just like cleaning them up and separating all the garbage parts from the giant, like big pieces. And when I washed my hands under the faucet, it felt like somebody came up and static shocked me on the arm. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I didn't really realize that when I did that, I was covered from like fingertip to elbow in just dust. And that was very... And then like washing it, put it into my skin. And usually when I had them, I would just end up falling asleep and having pretty bizarre dreams, but I didn't fall asleep from that. And that was, it was really weird. The effect of it was like not immediate, but like within a couple of minutes, probably just because of how much there was and how it got in through my skin. And I sat down on my couch, and my friend, she came in around the corner and came to sat by me, and like you talk about after images, like maybe like 13 after images each, like maybe a quarter second behind the last. And when she turned and looked at me, there was like a jutting row of after images of her face, but then the original image sort of wrapped around and was in front of all of them. It was very weird. And that's, I think, all I
By either colored mauve or chartreuse.
over the top.
It's pretty trivial. But you just watch. And part of what you have to train people to do is, it's weird. People don't know how to look at the back of their own eyelids. People don't know how to look at darkness. And so what I say is close your eyes, sit in darkness, and watch the back of your eyelids with the simple expectation that you might see something.
No, it's not. Psilocybin is a bit more unstable. I would say they're equally uncontrollable. But psilocybin almost always has like a faint veil of like you, even if it catches you off guard, you're kind of like, I've never been so in awe that I like could have easily forgotten like why that's happening. But with the Flyer Garrick, it was so solid, so stunningly visually presented, that it was like very easy to forget the source and just sort of be in absolute awe and speechless, to where you can just sort of, all you can really do is perceive it. And you can't even, it's like it pushes all other thoughts out, because it's just such like a profound, stable visual, very, very impactful.
You know, close your eyes and look. Well, then the streaming gives way to the first wave, which is usually pretty steep. I mean, I've had trips where I could see it coming toward me, you know, and it was 100 miles wide and 10 miles high, and it's just like a tidal wave, and you say, oh my God, you know, what have we done here? Raise this thing up, and it's just roaring toward you, and there's nothing you can do then, except I just say to it, you know, I'm yours, please don't hurt me. Please, for Christ's sake, don't hurt me. And it's like watching a thermonuclear explosion through about 30 feet of crystal clear glass. I mean, when I do it in California, I have the feeling that when the thing hits, everybody from Vancouver to Tijuana must have just had to crawl under their desk, because the idea that this is in your mind is inconceivable. I mean, it hits with the force of an asteroid impact or something like that. And finally, you know, in a sense, you lose consciousness, because you can't say what goes on. It's just so extraordinarily boundary dissolving that there's no there, and there's no you there to tell you about it. And then you begin to drift down through the layers, and it presents itself. And it can present itself all kinds of different ways. I remember one trip I had, I think it was this same trip, the 100 miles wide, 10 miles high thing. This wave came at me, and I barely had time to lay down. And after a long, long time, I became aware that there was a woman standing over me in some kind of tight-fitting suit, some kind of sexy outfit, and I heard a voice, and it said, they say it helps to close your eyes, cowboy. And so I closed my eyes, and it was just raging. And then after about 30 seconds, I opened my eyes, and this woman who was standing over me with my
body between her legs, put her face right down next to mine and said, "Is it strong enough for you, asshole?" Yeah.
Oh my.
Yes. So, you know, the humor of the thing is amazing. It can come at you so many different ways. And then the conversations take place. And they can be anything. The other thing you can do with mushrooms, which is really fun, is you can say to it, be MDMA. And it will just drop its outer space-ish garb and all that, and it will be MDMA. You can say to it, be LSD, and it will be LSD. And then, as I said, the scariest thing to say to it is, show me what you really are for yourself. And at that point, it just begins to come apart, and you can't stand it. After 40 seconds of that, you say, "I'm sorry I even asked. You know, reassure me." And because you have the sense, you know, my God, this thing is what it seems to be. It's a galactic intelligence. It's 1 billion years old. It's touched 10 million worlds. It knows the history of 150,000 civilizations. It's beyond your possibility of conceiving, and why it is communicating with an organic atom like yourself is not entirely clear.
Wow. I really got pulled into that. Interesting.
You know, when psychedelics were first being discussed, it was thought that they would prepare people for death. In a sense, they probably do. But in the same way that they prepare people for death, they prepare people for transformation. It gets you used to the idea that the world is not what it appears to be, and it gets you used to the idea that the world is somehow animate, intelligent, and proceeding along its own agenda. So in a way, shamans have always been anticipations of some future state of mankind. They're the masters of language. They are the ones who are telepathic with the animals. They are the ones who can see into the future. So this archaic nostalgia gets real focus once you realize that it is the shaman and his or her shamanic techniques that confers on them the extra historical dimension. That is how you get out of linear history. That's how you visit the realm of the ancestors. That's how you travel into the future. That's how you break up the tyranny of Newtonian serial time. The Gaian mind has always been there. Nature originally, through the plants and shamanism, provided the tools for us to access this incredible natural database. Through the vicissitudes of history, previous generations lost the key in Western society. Since the 1960s, the key has been refound. It's a matter of great social controversy. It's a matter of great risk to those who take it, how they will be viewed by their peers. But there is no longer, ignorance is no longer an excuse. Anthropology in the last 100 years has laid at our doorstep the tools necessary for an archaic reconstruction of
I'm sorry, I forgot. This is very interesting. I forgot to mention this on Twitter. I'd like to invite people that aren't normally here. I'm so bad at spelling. There we are. Okay.
Society
I didn't want to say
and
anything.
human values within that society. It's inconceivable that Western industrial capitalism could run on another 500 or 1,000 years. It will not continue as it has. It will deteriorate under the pressure of resource scarcity. And what few democratic values we have obtained, what little space for reasoned discourse has been created, will be the first to be swept away. So it's very, very important that people take back their minds and that people analyze our dilemma in the context of the entire human story, from the descent onto the grassland to our potential destiny as citizens of the galaxy and the universe. We are at a critical turning point. And as I say, the tools, the data that holds the potential for our salvation is now known. It is available. It is among us. But it is misrepresented. It is slandered. It is litigated against. And it's up to each one of us to relate to this situation in a fashion that will allow us to answer the question that will surely be put to us in some point in the future, which is, what did you do to help save the world? History is some kind of a phase transition. It only lasts about 25,000 years. Some people think that's a long time. Some people think it's a short time. It depends on where you stand. I think of it as snap. You know, one moment you're hunting ungulates on the plains of Africa, and the next moment you're hurling a gold ytterbium superconducting extrastellar device toward Alpha Centauri, with all of mankind aboard in virtual space being run as a simulation in circuitry. You know? It's just first the one thing, then the other thing. But now history, which lasts 25,000 years, is this weird period where you're neither fish nor fowl. You know, you're not the hunting ape anymore, but you are not yet the 16-dimensional digital god, you know? And in that transition phase, there is confusion, there is angst. But now we're at the end. We have I maintain anybody who's peddling angst and peddling pessimism and peddling all this stuff is just, that's so 2 minutes ago. Question.
Weird to think that this guy, when I emailed him about watching this, he responded so quickly.
It's very, very mysterious. I guess I should try and describe this. You are the people to tell, if anybody is. What I found about this communicating with it thing is that sometimes it's easy and it just comes, and that's what the trip is about. But if it's elusive for you, or if you've taken mushrooms many times and yet this doesn't seem to be what happened to you, I couldn't describe how it works for me anyway. It's as though a certain level of intoxication with the mushroom is the precondition for being able to communicate, but is not itself enough. So that I will feel the levels building in my body, and I will be very stoned, and then I will come into this place where I will say, now it is possible to invoke the spirit in the mushroom. And then I invoke it, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. I remember an old I Love Lucy thing where Ethel is asking Lucy how she gets in touch with the flying saucers. And she says, I just say, come in, little green man, come in, little green man. It's almost like that. In fact, it is like that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do this stuff for like for entertainment enhancement or like parties and stuff, but if that's not what you're going for, there does seem to be a layer of experience that is gate kept by you have to actively become a participant in the experience. That's something I've definitely noticed doing different things, is that if you're just sort of passively going by and you don't make it known, usually verbally, then there's going to be a limit as to where you can go and what you can understand and experience. But even just so much as saying, verbalizing an intent can have a radical change on the experience. That seems to be like what
No,
he's
they're
getting
not
at.
green. What I do is I get the feeling, which is, I call it, it's almost like, I'm embarrassed to tell this kind of stuff. It's a feeling of being very Irish. It's a feeling of elfenness. And then I say, aha, we're getting close in. They're near. I smell them. They're nearby. And then I just say, show. And there's this music, this tinkling stuff. And it begins to get stronger. So I say, come in, little green man, come in. And then it gets louder and louder. And then finally, once you get the valve open, you don't have to worry. It will pour through as long as you can watch it and be with it and sing with it. And it is obviously the basis for the idea of elves and elfin energy and little people who make jeweled machines and play musical instruments and live in the mountains.
What a way to say it. Wow. The way to communicate past words, music is one. Yeah. I think that for me, it's the best way to do it. I think that there might be a lot of ways for other people to do it, but for me, it seems like it has to be verbal. Otherwise, for me, I think if I'm not verbal about my intention, then it's still only a consideration. Because even when I'm alone by myself, I'll speak something to confirm it. I'm just a very verbal person. And I think that if you don't have a lot of experience,
wondered these same things.
It's probably a great starting point for communicating intent for somebody who's new to that kind of thing too, because everybody can understand the verbal. Like we all sort of understand that once you say something and put it out there, you've done that. But yeah, music is a really essential tool to controlling and changing how things go. But for me, that still makes it like if I'm having a really bad time with something like this, I can always change the lighting, the room, lighting, environment, and music. And the music, I always kind of have like a fairly decent guess as to how it's going to change it, but it's still more so out of my hands than if I verbalize intent.
Asked it what it is. It seems to be able to present itself many different ways. I mean, it can be almost like a robotic, cybernetic.
I can't imagine what it would be like to not be able to internally visualize things.
Different ways. I mean, it can be almost like a robotic, cybernetic, disembodied kind of thing. Or sometimes it's like
you know, your girlfriend in hyperspace. It has this very sexy kind of, I don't know, these funny vibes to be coming off a pharmaceutical product.
The thing about DMT in particular that I always think from like an analytical, like philosophical perspective is that people tend to describe a very similar experience where they leave and they go to a place and they meet beings. Sometimes they're called elves. And the experiences they have when they get there are all very similar. And I think that if you just talk to people about this experience, if a lot of people talk to, like, let's say 30 people come and report their experience to one individual person, but they never said that it was DMT, that if they left out the catalyst for the experience, I think that it would, to the person that was receiving all the information, they would assume that all these people got into a vessel and went somewhere, like a physical location. And that, to me, seems to suggest that there's something that's more happening than just all in their heads, because a lot of these reports from people were from, like, we have a lot of reports from people really early before, like, other people had access to the information to be able to like sort of mimic each other's stories. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about it. It's less like people are taking something, but it's more like they're getting in a vessel and going to a place. That's exactly what it seems like. And it's a very logical conclusion to draw to that also seems to make no sense when we apply like what we know about pharmacology and people's reactions to them. This is a very interesting subject in general because of that.
But it might as well be another intellect, because it seems like it. It seems as different from you as the person sitting next to you, at least that different from you. So I treat it that way. I don't know, perhaps people have always heard voices in states of high agitation or stimulation. We don't know what to do with that kind of thing because it's not in our tradition, but it's a shocking reality. I mean, for anybody who thinks plants don't talk, it's a real life reorienting experience to have one then harangue you. And I didn't think plants talked. I had friends who claimed this, and my dream was really to figure out what these people could possibly mean. It seems to be truly a visual communicator. Its mode is vision. It shows you what it intends. But the mushroom actually speaks. It delivers itself of little aphorisms. I'm sure you've heard me try to sum them up for people. I mean, it said things to me like, man must have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you'll become part of somebody else's plan. It said, nature loves courage. The way nature responds to courage is by removing obstacles. Well, these are things that your middle track Zen guru could probably come up with. But then it says other things which are completely puzzling. It says things like, what you call man is time. And then sometimes it is humorous. I mean, hilariously, insanely humorous. It's like having Groucho Marx in bed with you. I mean, sometimes it has a certain Rod Steiger-esque kind of Jewish persona. I remember one conversation I had with it where I said, "What are you doing here?" And it said, "Listen, You're a mushroom, you live cheap.
Wow. This is the other guy that said you're a big fan
In
of.
the Jugendstil splendor of one of Prague's most famous concert halls, we encountered Richard Alpert and persuaded...
Let's see. Oh my gosh. I've already, let's see. It's not bode well for me. I think we started this at 20 minutes into the stream. And I've already, if I don't count that, I've already added 30 minutes.
him
We're
to
going to be here
have
for a
lunch with
while.
us. Alpert, who now calls himself
Why crying, Eddie
Ram
Peoples?
Das, is one of the most enduring figures from the American cultural upheaval of the 1960s. Alpert, whose career reaches from Harvard University to the plains of the Punjab, has...
I don't know what's wrong with her. She's hardcore Canton and like.
She's just like that. It's fine. She does. Yes, this. I'm telling you, this has happened a lot. You haven't been here, I'm telling you. It's not that weird.
has transformed himself into a spokesman.
JSTLK's voice is disgusting. Well, stop listening to JSTLK's voice and listen to the stream, buddy. Let me let Terrence McKenna and now Ram Dass distract you from JSTLK's voice.
For humanity's ignored and downtrodden. Well, when you look, you mentioned in your talk the other night, since some people think the 90s are going to be a second turn of the spiral,
what a phrase.
I observed the 60s as a spear-carrying 14-year-old. I was down in the masses. What were the mistakes that are avoidable if there's a second chance?
They're inevitably going to be avoided. The first mistake was idealism. The first mistake, and the mistake was thinking that because you had seen it, you could just...
Pale buddy JSTLK, beady eyes, big lips. I hate that I read that out loud.
Go like that and everybody else would see it. And you could just say, it's all love, and then everybody would love. I mean, it was a naivete. It was naivete. It was not working on ourselves deeply enough to be without the clinging of mind that made us try to use it. It was our lurking righteousness that got in our way.
Can you make a revolution, though, without an inner righteousness?
That's the far-out question of where would the action come from? And there's this line in Buddhism that says, out of emptiness arises compassion. And what I experience is that there is a way in which I can sit down in front of a truck or feed a person or go make love or go surf, and there is an appropriateness in every one of those acts. And for me to hear that, I've really got to shut up. And my work is to keep shutting up, to hear which one it is. And if it is a revolution, so be it. Mm-hmm. So be it. You know the story of the monk and the army general? You know, and the army general's disemboweling all the monks? And his reputation has spread far and wide as a cruel, cruel man. And he comes into this village and he says to his adjutant, tell me what's happening. And the adjutant said, all the people are frightened, they're bowing down to you. All the monks in the monastery have fled to the hills but one monk. And the general was outraged about this one monk. And he gets up and he goes to the monastery and he pushes open the doors of the monastery and he walks into the courtyard and there's the monk standing in the middle of the courtyard. And he walks up to him and he says, don't you know who I am? I could take my sword and run it through your belly without blinking an eye. And don't you know who I am? I could have your sword run through my belly without blinking an eye.
That's great.
That's the place from which revolutions can heal, rather than just starting the cycle all over again.
then this is the place we never found in the 60s. I mean, I've always said it was all well
we
and
reduced
good.
it to revolution rather, and although we had the taste of evolution, we reduced it to revolution.
Well, and the day they came with machine guns, we didn't stand like that monk. Everybody said, "Oh my God, you could get killed playing this game." And I flew to Laos and India for 3 years.
But already we had produced the they by being so busy being we.
True.
Because so that they even noticed we. The fact that they noticed us was because we were busy making statements instead of just being it.
So maybe, I mean, this is just occurring to me, that being in a place like Prague, the real thing we have to learn here is how to make velvet revolutions, non-confrontational.
Exactly right. Exactly right. That's why I admire Havel so much. That's why he's way up there in my, because he is a compassionate leader. He's got wisdom, not just knowledge. He is tuned. There's a quality of his heart that feels present. And he said in this op-ed article, I just read his letter last month.
I read it too.
And you know, at one point he said, we have to allow the naturalness to come back, the personal stuff, the heart stuff. I mean, he was right there with all of the...
Do you see, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't. Let me preface it by saying, do you see anybody who could play that role for the millions of kids in England and the United States who are now asking, where do we go from here?
No.
Is that good or bad?
I guess the situation hasn't demanded the emergence of that being yet.
Of those kinds of
Because it can't be anybody that comes forward and says, I'm it.
Oh no, it has to be someone who the people
But the
say
situation
you're
can
it.
demand the formation. I mean, you watch, does the man make the time or the time make the man? You know, and you can feel how what took a certain person 20 years, like to ride a bicycle, somebody later on can ride a bicycle like that because the whole culture rides bicycles. There's some, like, process where the situation emerges where the person has to come forward and they're just forced out. I mean, I go and I look at all the senators that are running for this or that, and I go to breakfast with them and I listen and I tune. And Jerry Brown I hung out with, and I said, you know, he's got interesting ideas, but his heart, my God, he's got work to do. This poor guy, he's suffering so much. And I love him, and I want those ideas out, but I want him to work on himself, you know, and so I don't
do
see
you
anything
really care in terms of political terms whether Jerry Brown makes himself palatable to an electorate?
I care because I work with the Mayan widows in Guatemala, and I feel like I'm representing them, and our government, our administration's policies are killing them and their children and their husbands. And some way I've got to play my part as a member of a society that is imposing so much suffering on so many people. I can't just walk away and say, oh, I'm helping the nice Mayans. I've also got to realize I'm an American citizen that's hurting the Mayans, and I've got to play both games to change one way and to do the other thing.
So there's a kind of, not to go egghead here, but a kind of coincidentia positorum, because on one level what you're saying is, it's all right, don't worry. And on another level, you clearly are involved in a search for defining your role, where you would do some good. Optimum.
Jerry Brown was the governor of California in the 1980s and the 2010s. Who's Jerry Brown? I'm so bad with names.
Judo move.
Optimum judo move. So it isn't enough to just say the system will take care of itself.
But I am part of the system that is taking care of itself.
So it's a sense of acting without acting through self.
It's being not identified with the actor and not being identified with the fruits of the action. That's, I mean, to me, one of my basic texts is the Bhagavad Gita, and those are the two injunctions. Mm-hmm. And I really hear those. And they're very weird. How you do an act when you're not identified with being the actor and you're not attached to the fruits.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I lead this funny, continuous paradox.
This guy was just talking about
that suffering stinks and suffering's grace. And I live with both of those all the time.
Well, I think most people do, don't you
I think most people have taken a position.
Oh, that suffering is bad, they hate it, they want to keep it
or
away
that
from
it's grace, then it's, lovely.
Well, and then the great masses of people never really draw the distinction because for them suffering is like air and water.
It's life. It's life.
It comes with
it's
it.
life.
Burying the many children you bear.
That's why I found in the villages in India less suffering than I found around the middle class in America.
Certainly less whining.
Well, less preoccupation with what they don't have.
Well, they have a philosophy of reincarnation that must sustain them.
There is something else that's feeding them.
Where we have a philosophy of, if you don't get it now, you never will.
Exactly. We threw out in the councils of Nicaea, Trent, and Constantinople just the thing that would have healed, but we did it so that the church could have power over.
Well, I think it was Friedrich Nietzsche who said there was only one Christian and they crucified him.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, given the amount of time this has been out and the number of views, I'm surprised nobody has. Oh, they did. Why does it not have a? Oh, because there's no zeros for the beginning. I see. Oh, they are going to talk about DMT. Interesting.
Oh, good. That's such a good line.
Well, I was asking you, what did we do wrong in the 60s?
Yeah, okay.
One thing that has occurred to me, and I certainly felt it with my friends, was we assumed it would go on forever. We had no notion of window of opportunity.
Yes.
We just thought we'd blown the doors off the hinges and they would never be put back on.
Yeah.
To me, the most amazing transformation in my lifetime is not the revolution of the 60s, but the counter-revolution of the 70s, where they managed to put the cuckoo clock back together again, even though we'd kicked it all
Did they
over
or didn't they? That's what I'm... see, you keep thinking...
You'd think that YouTube would still automatically, retroactively apply, but I think you have to have zeros in front.
There was that opportunity and it closed, and I think it happened then. And all of the 70s and 80s, all that was this kind of reverberation to this process. And that I'm here, and you're here, and we're both still here, and it's the 90s, and I got a lot of people that, I talk now in middle America, and I look at my audiences, and they've never taken dope, they've never read Eastern holy books or anything, and I just say the same stuff I was saying in the 60s that I was saying to people with flowers and big pupils, and these people in the middle, they're corseted, nice people, and they're going, and I think, far out, look, it happened. And I was looking the other way.
Well, that's true.
And that's where you're looking for the resonance of a person to come forth that speaks from that consciousness with the assurance of the truth of it.
Right. Well, Blake said a wonderful thing. He said, if I can get it right, if the truth can be...
I'll just go back a second. I don't think that it's strange that he's saying essentially that normal American people seem to yearn for these ideas the same as the hippies did, like back in like Haight-Ashbury and stuff. I think that most people are. I was trying to think of how I worded it. I've talked to Tuna about this a bit. It seems like most people feel like everything is more mundane than it ought to be, and that most people sometimes they'll word it as like they're looking for purpose or meaning, but I think most people are looking for like the magic in life. They're looking for something that makes all this dumb, normal, boring stuff more important, more special. And a lot of times when people talk about like Eastern philosophy and things like that, even if the people don't, the exact words don't have to resonate with them, just that feeling of that there is something there that might have a little bit more wonder to it, that like maybe this isn't just the only thing that we do forever until we die, I think is very easy to grab onto. So I don't think it's at all surprising that your average middle America person is going to drink up these ideas greedily when he's talking about it.
Wonderful.
People are people, I guess, but heard it in their culture, like Terrence was talking about earlier. I think that most people publicly conform to culture, but individually hate it and reject it.
Thing he said, if I can
I
get
mean, the people that adhere to it more, especially in private, hate it the most.
it right, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed.
Right, exactly.
So all you have to do is say it.
Exactly. When can you say it simply enough? Is it only said in silence simply enough? Or are there words? Or is there music? Or is there what? Or is there...
There's words, there's music, there's silence, there's gesture, because it's always going to exceed one's grasp.
Oh boy.
To this point, what I've said could be imputed to be just talk about a superb psychedelic drug. And so they're saying, oh, well, so this guy advocates the use of a superb psychedelic drug. Seems reasonable or unreasonable, depending on where you went to church. But it's not that paradigm challenging. But what is paradigm challenging is the content of the experience. The content of the experience is completely mind-boggling, completely befuddling. I don't know what we're going to do with the content of the experience, because fully gotten out and fully discussed and fully realized, it's not going to leave one brick upon another in the cheerfully naive edifice that our half-baked civilization has erected as universal truth. We're not going to, science is not going to be able to survive the encounter with the psychedelic experience, because it is not an encounter with the Freudian, the repressed memories of your miserable and battered childhood or whatever it is you went through, and it isn't even an encounter with the miserable memories of the battered childhood of the human species that we all went through, a la Carl Jung. That is all there. But that's in the hallway where you hang your hat and the antechamber where they take your coat. The main event, folks, doesn't even have anything to do with the psychology of human beings. The main event is another dimension. A dimension so bizarre, so titanically peculiar, so strange, so unanticipated by our language, our history, our literature, that it is literally like the discovery of another world. And there's life in that world. Now, a funny thing about discovering new worlds is that you usually, when you get the new world all mapped out, you usually discover that there's somebody living there. And for them, it's not the new world at all. And, you haven't discovered anything. You've just shown up in the middle of their scene with a distorted rap, sort of like Christopher Columbus. The first thing that happens is that there is a sense as though all the air in the room had been sucked out. All the colors brighten. This is that increase in visual acuity. All edges become sharp. Distant things stand out in their clarity. This is at one toke. At two tokes,
You close your eyes, you feel a sense of anesthesia seeping through your body. You close your eyes and you see a floral pattern rotating in space, usually yellow-orange. People who do this occasionally, and nobody does it a lot, call it the chrysanthemum. It's a floral pattern, like a pattern in a Chinese brocade.
Okay. Since they're on this, I guess I'll say how it was for me. I know that's the chrysanthemum effect. Um, the the anesthetic effect is not there at all for me. The one thing that I always say about it is that so like mushrooms, LSD, these things all touch your mind. You're inebriated, you're intoxicated. You are not by any stretch sober. But DMT leaves the mind untouched in that way. You're wholly, at least for me, I'm going to speak of my experience as a generality. You are clear-headed, experiencing things that make no sense to experience clear-headed. The chrysanthemum effect, it didn't seem like a flower to me. First it was sound. It was like a whirring of machines until it got louder and louder until I couldn't see anymore. Oh no, I skipped a part. So I lay down in the grass and it was as though there was like a three-dimensional rectangle projected out and then parts of it pressed in to where it looked like writing. It's almost like when AI tries to write letters before it could do that at all. And it was like, that looks like English letters, but not quite. And then that inverted, and then the sound. And the chrysanthemum effect, it was less like flowers, and it just seemed like gears inlaid with gears, kind of like a burnt orange color, if I could say there was color at all. Maybe like a, I don't know how to pronounce, like sepia, like that film, like the Western film filter that you can put things through, so it has like that burnt orange brown color over everything. That was like the gear colors, and everything I could see was just like gears inlaid with gears, the really loud whirring sound. Is it sepia? I don't know how to pronounce it. And it was pretty obvious to me when I tried to focus on them. It was like fractally. These gears were made up of little gears, and they were all moving. And as the sound got louder and louder, it got closer and closer. And as soon as the gears touched me, I disintegrated completely. And then at that point, I could see sepia. Thank you. Yeah. And so I disintegrated, and it was in the environment. I could see 360 degrees around me. It's like in all directions, all at the same time. But I didn't have eyes anymore. Like I wasn't like, I didn't have to do that to look. I could see 360 degrees all at the same time. And I was part of the environment. And the environment was moving. It's sort of phased, or like the gears kind of got fuzzier and harder to detect, but it was still similar. And that was the environment all the way around. And it was sort of, I was sort of moving forward, down and up through almost like a slow moving roller coaster through the environment. And the things that were there that talked, they were also a part of the environment. And it was almost like seeing a magic eye where you can see the imprint clearly through, but it's all just like that same pattern being repeated on the page, but you can still see the image. It was very much like that. And they said, there's a reason why this isn't how you thought it was going to be. And I was just getting really overtaken by it all. And I did something that I think is kind of like silly to do. I always said, I'm going to take DMT and I'm going to ask to talk to God. And so there's a bit of a blur of things I don't remember. And then I said, oh yeah, I remember. I said I want to do DMT and say I want to talk to God. So I kind of collected my thoughts and I said without a mouth. Also, it was really weird to be able to hear it and like noticeably just not having ears to hear them say these things. I said, oh yeah, I want to talk to God. And then all I know is that everything changed and it was pretty dark. And I was laying back down on the ground outside. And like I stood from laying down like straight up on my feet and like big gasp of air, and it was done. And my buddy was like, all right, he's like taking me home. And I just sat there trying to explain it, and I just couldn't. And it was really, really, really wild. But the thing that was the most profound for me is that I still very much had a sense of me, what I am. But literally every single thing that I would identify myself with or things that I care about, that was all stripped away. There was like nothing really mattered to me that matters to me now, until I remembered it was like I had to reach super far back into like the me that's on the ground, so to speak, to remember that that's what I was going to do when I was there. And it was just like the command that I had going into it was like a goal that I had. So I think that's why I could reach it. And I said that. And I feel like that's what destabilized the whole thing, was that I had brought something with me that I wasn't supposed to. Because before that, like I said, it was just, this is me. But it's totally different than how I would ever think of myself in any other context. But because of that too, it gives me a notion of how we can exist without any of this. And it makes the idea of dying a little less scary, albeit not any more desirable.
This forms and stabilizes, and then you either break through it or you require one more toke. So you take, let us assume, a third toke, long and slow, through a glass pipe. You vaporize this stuff, and you take it in and in and in.
They say you're supposed to hold it, but it really is like breathing in burnt rubber. It is. So it feels so toxic on your lungs. It's awful.
And there is definitely somewhere in here a threshold which you must exceed. And when you do that, this membrane-like thing, this chrysanthemum, will actually part. And there is a sound like the crumpling of a plastic bread wrapper or the crackling of flame. A friend of mine says this is the radio intellecty of your soul exiting through the anterior fontanelle at the top of your head. Could be. In any case, this crackling sound and a tone,
That's the sound. That's the machine sound.
And then there's this impression of transition, and you're now 20 seconds deep into this experience. There's an impression of transition. It's as though there were a series of tunnels or chambers that you are tumbling down, being propelled by some kind of muscle behind you that is pushing you. I mean, yes, birth canal, yes, of course. But anyway, a tunnel, and what I've noticed about this tunnel is the walls and ceiling flux and come down to meet each other, and where they touch, they pull apart with a... And then you're propelled into the next space, and then the next, and then you are there. Where is there? It's underground. How you know this, you cannot say, but there is an irreconcilable sense of enormous mass surrounding you. In other words, you are underground. You're at the center of a mountain or something, and you're in a room which aficionados call the dome. And people will ask each other, did you see the dome? Were you there? And the
the walls, if such they be, are crawling with geometric hallucinations, very brightly colored, very iridescent with deep sheens and very high reflective surfaces. Everything is machine-like and polished and throbbing with energy, but that is not what immediately arrests my attention. What arrests my attention is the fact that this space is inhabited, that the immediate impression as you break into it is there is a cheer. You break in to this space and are immediately swarmed by squeaking, self-transforming elf machines. These things which are made of light and grammar and sound that come chirping and squealing and tumbling toward you, and they say, "Hooray! Welcome! You're here!" And my immediate impression, no matter how many times I do this, and I've done it maybe 30 or 40 times, which isn't a lot in a lifetime of worshiping it, my immediate impression is that they are welcoming.
Hooray! Welcome! You're here! How wonderful that you're here. You come so rarely. We're so delighted to see you.
And one of the strange things about DMT is that it does not affect your mind in the ordinary sense, in that, you know, drugs, they make you giggly, they frighten you.
That's what I was saying.
They stimulate you, they depress you. DMT does none of this.
Doesn't
You
touch
go
you.
to that place with all your groceries.
Yeah.
You're there, and you're there thinking, Jesus H. fucking Christ, what is this? What is it? And you're thinking, you know, I must be dead. I've done it this time. I must be dead. And so you think, heart, yes, heart, pulse, yes. And meanwhile, these things are literally in your face. And what they do is they jump into your chest, and then they jump out again. And what they're doing, and this is the point, I think, what they're doing is they are singing, chanting, speaking in some kind of language that is very bizarre to hear. But what is far more important is that you can see it. They speak in a language which you see. And this is completely confounding, because syntax is not something you ordinarily reach out and touch. And in this space, that's what's happening. And so, like jewel self-dribbling basketballs, these things come running forward. And what they are doing with this visible language that they create is they're making gifts. They're making gifts for you. And they will say, which condenses as something which looks like a cross between a Sopwith camel, a Havana cigar, a piece of abalone, an opal, and nookie, and they offer it to you. And you're looking at this thing, and as you look at it, it also transforms, changes, speaks, sings, undergoes metastasis, undergoes metamorphosis. And these things are just accumulating. And each elf machine creature elbows others aside, says, look at this, take this, choose me. This state of incredible frenzy goes on for about 3 minutes. And all the time the elves are saying, don't give way to wonder. Do not abandon yourself to amazement. Pay attention. Look at what we're doing. And then do it. Do it. And it's this thing where then everything stops and they wait. And you feel like a torch, a spark lit in your belly that begins to move up your esophagus. And eventually when it reaches your mouth just flies open. And this language-like stuff comes out. Acoustically, it's but what you're not hearing it. The startled friends who sent you to this place are putting up with this. What you're experiencing is a visual modality where these tones are surfaces, shading, colors, insets, jewels. You are making something. Erase, move forward, add cerulean, put in stippling. It's that sort of thing. And they go mad with joy when you do this. So, this is an experience which in some form, I mean, it will be different for each one of you, but in some form, at least what will be similar to my description is how dramatic it will be. It will hit you as hard as it hit me if you do it right. This, to me, this experience is of a fundamentally different order than any other experience this side of the yawning grave. And why religions have not been built around it, why empires have not risen and fallen around the control of its sources, why theology has not enshrined it as its central exhibit for the presence of the other in the human world, I don't know. I can tell the secret, as you notice.
I've always thought that, I've always thought of it as like a shortcut to, not like enlightenment, but like, people spend their lifetimes meditating and things to achieve states of consciousness like this. And I've always thought of DMT as this is the shortcut. You don't have to do all that. You can just DMT and you can experience the thing that these people put all this time and energy into.
Nothing shuts me up. But a long, long time ago, I took an oath to tell all secrets that came my way. So how can it be then that a compound which each of us carries right here, right in the pineal gland, right in the Ajna chakra, the Philosopher's Stone is no further away than that? How can this be secret from us? How can we be trapped in a dimension of such limitation and such mundaneness when our own nervous systems and the ecology around us and our own history over the past 500,000 years argues that this is what we were born and bred for? This is where we belong. This is what at play in the fields of the goddess must mean. And somehow history has made us dysfunctional, buried the mystery, made it, if at best, a piece of secret knowledge jealously guarded by somebody. I mean, I don't know. There are lots of mystery cults and secret societies in the world. I don't know if any of them are guarding DMT as a secret. It may be so. No one told me to keep my mouth shut. If this is not the secret that these lineages are guarding, then they're guarding an empty house. This is the secret. the Western mind is very queasy around these experiences that cast into.
Why is this loser making videos about Terrence McKenna? His hair's so curly, I could have mistaken it for Mr. Girl's father. Why does it bother you?
Doubt its cherished illusions about how reality is put together. And when you get to DMT, you have hit the main vein. I mean, I hold it in reserve as the ultimate convincer. I mean, that's for there are these people running around, you know, who say, oh, you people who are into drugs, give me a good branch whiskey and a little TV. I think you're deluding yourself. Say, do you? Well, have you got 5 minutes to invest in this proposition, my cheerful friend? Because if you do, have I got news for you.
With that, I'm gonna take a quick 2-3 minute break. I have to use the restroom. Get you guys the intro screen. I'll be right back. I just have to use the restroom. whoa. I just gotta look at my face in the mirror. My face is terribly broken out. These cats are killing me.
Doke.
Elk, do you have any footnotes on this Rupert guy?
I met somebody who said there's a guy you got to meet. He lives in Occidental, California. And I said, where's that? And he said, well, just, he said, I've arranged it all. He said, you get on the Greyhound bus at so-and-so, you get off at Santa Rosa, California, and he'll meet you, stand by the road in this place, and he'll meet you. So I thought, okay. And he said, and here's a tape with him talking. So I listened on a Walkman on the bus journey, on the Greyhound bus journey to Santa Rosa, to this Terence McKenna.
I don't know. He was, oh wait. Oh, I guess it must be unmuted because you heard me say that. It was just somebody they showed him with really briefly, but didn't do anything with. It was a weird edit.
Tape where he's talking about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and its effects on consciousness. So I'd never heard anything like this before, and I thought this is really amazing stuff. And so I stood in the appointed place, and after a couple of minutes, this battered golden Cadillac drew up with sort of peeling tail fins, and the windows scrolled down, and there's this guy with curly hair and dark glasses who leant out of the window and said, Dr. Sheldrake, I presume.
I think that our evolutionary history is rooted in the past, but I've been reading on my journey here this novel, On the Edge, just published in England last week by Edward St. Aubyn. It's set in California. The crucial scenes occur in Esalen. And here's a conversation going on in the hot tubs on page 130. According to Terence McKenna, said Flavia, who happens to be a genius instead of an arrogant British jerk, history is rooted in the future. So...
And when I returned to California, I was standing on a street corner in Santa Cruz in white pajamas, and a car stopped. An old friend from a previous lifetime said, "There's somebody you have to meet. Get in the car." I had nothing to do. It sounded okay, and in that time, I believed that everything goes perfectly. You just go along with the flow, as they said. I didn't know it would be a 2-hour drive. So I got in the car, there was the 2-hour drive to Berkeley, and I was literally dumped out of the car on Terence's front step. I never heard of Terence at that time, 1972. And I went in, and what happened then, I would still say, although we've had many wonderful talks and exciting, thrilling, and nutritious times in the meanwhile, that was quite a miraculous chat. Many subjects came up. How to grow mushrooms, outer space, I don't know, anything you could think of, all passed by in the course of an hour or two. In this way, we became friends.
We're going to be talking with Rupert Sheldrake, one of Britain's most controversial natural scientists. Sheldrake is the proponent of a theory called morphic resonance. He believes that the presence of the past actually impinges on processes in the present and the future. In other words, our world is as it is because of how it once was. This is not a genetic theory, not a theory of natural selection, but a field theory which holds that actions and situations in the past are able, through the mere act of having happened, to shape future and present events. Rupert, this immense Baroque building is the Museum of Natural History.
I feel like that's not even contrary to how the average person views the past, though.
In Prague, and I wanted to bring you here because I thought it would be an appropriate place to discuss your ideas, because after all, a museum is a kind of archive of morphology.
Exactly, with these stuffed animals and skeletons are like photographs, snapshots of forms frozen. But of course each animal behaves and moves, each animal develops as an embryo to its adult form, and each one evolves. So it's triply dynamic. We have to reconstruct that in our minds. But the whole thing really is a reflection, I think, of the memory behind each species. Each species is the repository of an entire process of memory.
Well, now this is the part of your thinking which goes well beyond orthodox theoretical biology. Say a bit more about that.
Well, the orthodox view is that all these amazing forms and all the behavior and instincts that the animals expressed were all coded in the chemical genes.
So a materialist theory.
That's a materialist theory. I think it goes far beyond that and involves a memory of instincts, a memory of behavior, a memory of form.
That is not materially based.
Not materially based. A collective memory on which each species draws.
But in a case like that, then how is it possible for new form to emerge at all?
Well, this is where novelty comes in. Well, no one can account for novelty except perhaps yourself.
So he took me to his A-frame in Occidental. You had to go up a sort of path, and you had to pass a hut. I wondered what was in the hut. He showed me later it was full of mushrooms. He had to go and vaporize them every few hours, humidify the atmosphere. Right. Anyway, Ralph Abraham, his friend, was staying there, and Ralph's a chaos mathematician at the University of California at Santa Cruz. He's still there. And these two guys were just talking. They met, to talk to each other. And I just sort of parachuted into this discussion. Ralph was there anyway. And we started talking, and 48 hours later, we were still talking. We had a little bit of sleep and ate a little bit. But, I mean, this was the most interesting conversation I'd ever had.
I think, therefore, that the premises on which this whole, Ralph called it a fantasy, a paranoid fantasy, the premises on which this is based.
That helped.
It took different forms. Last time we talked, I think it was a hypothetical time machine that would invade from the future and cause a collapse of normal human cognitive boundaries, where the machine elves, the DMT experience, etc., would take over in a meltdown of human consciousness in 2012.
That too.
Mathematics is a tiny fraction of a formalized modeling of the possible, which is constrained by very particular rules and is entirely, so far in the whole history of the subject, under the aegis of the Platonic spirit. And I just think that to try and pin it all to that just seems a limitation that one doesn't need at this stage. It may be helpful, it may be interesting.
My God, I see why they're alarmed now. Yes, well, I'm sure you're quite right. So what you're really calling for is the rebirth of poetry.
Well, and all kinds of lived experience through which we directly relate to the world.
You could pick up the newspaper tomorrow and prove me wrong, but this thing has already
I'll prove you wrong today.
Outlived itself many times. So you say.
Well, I don't know, sometimes you sound as if you're a hired consultant from the World Trade Organization. So
I hope the check is in the mail. Time is not simple. Time is defined by how much goes on in a given moment, and we're learning how to push, tetraflops of operations into a given second. So I think it's trickier than you think and harder to corner me than you may suppose. Now we have the great good fortune to be approaching the end of a millennium.
Would it be redundant to say this only happened?
I just wanted to take a minute to address the fact that, like, I know I'm not talking nearly as much as I normally would. I'm very interested. I'm sort of, like, captured by it. I've given a fair amount of commentary, but in smaller spaces, smaller slices. There's a few more people here. So I just want to address the fact that while I'm not talking as much, usually when I do pause, I'm saying a bit more than I
once
normally
in
would.
1,000 years? Yes. And
I guess I'm trying to respect this large piece for what it is and not also pause it so much like a normal reaction. It's where I'm taking away from it for other people as well.
it's extraordinarily fortunate. Once I was in England and I ran into somebody I hadn't seen for 20 years, and I was amazed, and I said to Rupert, how often does one get a chance to meet someone one hasn't seen for 20 years? And he said,
every 20 years?
dare say, I suppose every 20 years or so.
To me, all of these things are intelligence tests. And the people who pass the intelligence test are not worrying about pro bono proctologists from other star systems showing unannounced in their bedrooms. So, we have perfected politeness. We have perfected the ability to listen to damn foolishness without betraying by so much as the flick of an eyebrow that we realize what we're in the presence of. Now I think it's time to refine our mathematical skills, learn to think straight, and not be afraid to denounce the pernicious forms of foolishness which are vitiating the energies of our community and making us appear marginal and absurd in the discourse about truly transforming society.
That's pretty strong words.
Well, I can't wait to see this laboratory of clarity unfold before me tonight. As all nonsense is dispelled. The scalpel of reason is brought out by Terence.
Yes, well, it is an ambiguous enterprise and fraught with contradiction, but forward, ever forward.
I wonder if Terence McKenna is still alive.
How can we control the rhythm of our time? The techniques are two, my friend. The control of the breath, which controls heartbeat, but more importantly, the use of hallucinogenic plants, such as have been discovered in the Amazon by the Aborigines. They understand, you see, that the consciousness of the plants is a different kind of time, a much slower time. So if we would enter into that sort of time, we must take the plant into our body. It cannot be done any other way. This is the secret of shamanism. Then we enter into the time of the plant mind, the Gaian mind, that moves much more slowly. I spit on the grave of the people who put me in this place. These saboteurs. They say what I did was blasphemy. I'd strike out the sun if it insulted me. I still believe in the ways of evasion. Psychedelic drugs, art, revolution, sex, revolution, art. I believe in these things. They should understand that there is no bars to hold me or our ideas. From now on, tomorrow lasts forever, and it belongs to the revolutionaries, the time travelers, the dreamers. This is the end of the reign of the constipated nitwits and their blood-sucking stooges. Forward to the new order of the transtemporal dream. forward! My time wave theory, which would replace the scientific notion that time is a perfectly featureless and smooth surface, is the idea that time actually has a structure. It has a topology. It can be described somewhat in the way that a stock market can be described, as a series of rising and falling fluctuations of novelty. And over long periods of time, this novelty has accumulated in the universe, building up first stars and then later complex organic molecules, ultimately issuing into intelligent life and a culture such as our own. I believe that process in the universe is not driven from the events of the past, but rather drawn toward a kind of transcendental attractor that is ahead of us in time. We can understand the overarching metaphor which holds it all together,
This is the most 90s shit I've ever seen in my life.
which is the celebration of mind as play, the celebration of love as a genuine social value in the community. This is what they have suppressed so long. This is why they are so afraid of the psychedelics, because they understand that once you touch the inner core of your own and someone else's being, you can't be led into thing fetishism and consumerism. The message of psychedelics is that culture can be re-engineered as a set of emotional values rather than products. This is terrifying news. And if we are able to make this point, then we can pull back. We can pull back and we can transcend. 9 times in the last million years, the ice has ground south from the poles, pushing human populations ahead of it. And those people didn't fuck up. Why should we then? We are all survivors. We are the inheritors of 1,000,000 years of striving for the unspeakable. And now, with the engines of technology in our hands, we ought to be able to reach out and actually exteriorize the human soul at the end of time. Invoke it into existence like a...
I'm gonna go till the next chapter, which is like right around 152. We'll end it here and pick it up tomorrow. My allergies are killing me. I think I need to take a shower before I go to bed. I have a flat tire and I have to get it repaired tomorrow, kind of early. I can't miss that. We got a coupon for free tire repair. So it's a big deal. This has been significantly more interesting than I thought. Also, it's right around the halfway point of it, and I think that's probably good because it's making me really thoughtful, and I think that me being so thoughtful is making me less verbal when we're watching this.
UFO and open the violet doorway.
So maybe having a little more time to let the last hour and 45 minutes sink in will sort of reinvigorate me. Did you have that experience too, where you got like overly thoughtful when you were watching it, Elk?
Into hyperspace and walk through it, out of profane history and into the world beyond the grave, beyond shamanism, beyond the end of history, into the galactic millennium that has beckoned to us for millions of years across space and time. This is the moment. A planet brings forth an opportunity.
I did feel almost like a light flashback at times. Like, not quite, but like the pull to it. I've only had like 2 experiences that I could consider anything like a flashback. And it usually starts with a little pull, sort of sinking, pulling down sort of sunken feeling. And I there's parts of this that sort of made me feel the beginning of that.
Opportunity like this only
Very,
once in its lifetime, and
impressive.
we are ready, and
to
we
invoke
are
that.
poised, and as a community, we are ready to move into it, to claim it, to make it our own. It's there. Go for it, and thank you.
Yeah.
History has these dominator types by the balls, and it's not going to let up. You know, history is a psychedelic experience. It's the collective unfolding of the dream of our species in space and time. And we are at the apex. This is the peak. This is the second hour of the trip. We're going over the top.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll open with this by sharing some of my trip reports, because I don't know if it's just me, but like I've seen like Destiny talk about psychedelic experiences and a couple of people here and there, but it always seems so boring. Like there's some insightful stuff, but like I have stories. Like I have like I feel like the stories that I have from some of my trips and other drug experiences are like epics, as opposed to like these like cold reports that I've seen from other streamers. So yeah, I think tomorrow before we jump right into this, I'll talk about some of that, because it's a good appropriate organic place to talk about it. And I like sharing those things. They're pretty fun. Interesting. Embrace. Oh, there you go. Hopefully, I remember I'll tell us about the
core
story about
elements of this psychedelic thing is freedom on the broadest scale.
Unfortunately, I lost them, but Todd, the shaman guy, he gave me a packet, like a clear Ziploc baggie, but it had 9 datura seeds in them. And I don't know how hard they are to get, but if you know what datura is, you'd know how cool that is. And I lost them before I could plant them, which fucking sucks. Thank you.
I mean, it truly is.
And that is like top of the list of things that I'm very interested in, would be datura.
You will hear me use this phrase over and over again, boundary dissolving. And that's almost, for me, synonymous with freedom. This is what we want to do. We want to dissolve boundaries between the rich and the poor, the feminine and the masculine, the living and the dead. All boundaries do dissolve in psychedelic experience. And the social metaphor that captures this is revolution. Revolution is an eruption from the unconscious. It is not a reasonable thing. It has a logic of its own. It's as though the overmind reaches down into the mechanics of political process and says, no, it won't be that way. It will be this way.
And I said, my God, and I actually did a mirror on the wall, who's the weirdest one of all? And it said, Hans Moravec is the weirdest one of all. I said, shit, what am I, I should bring him here and sit at his feet. The politics of the situation here in this millennial crisis,
I think the reasonable response is to push the art pedal right through the floor. The way to escape the present cul-de-sac is an enormous outbreak of creativity of all sorts. We just need to overwhelm ourselves with creative expression. We are much more suited for dancing than for whatever it is that we have been doing. You know, whatever it wasn't dancing. One of the funny insights that I had that I don't try to make sense of, that I in fact don't believe, but I thought it, and it was an emotionally opening thought, though it's absurd on the face of it, was when I was in the Amazon, in these pastures, looking at these pastures full of these mushrooms, I kept thinking, you know, it's the lost part of the human brain. It's that part of us is in these fields. That this mushroom, this is human flesh, this flesh. It's a strange kind of human, but hell, we're about to give legal rights to fetuses. We might as well extend legal rights to mushrooms and make them voting citizens. Because, you see, it's intelligent. It's intelligent. It loves you. It can blow your mind. It can make you laugh. It can make you cry. There's no other way to relate to something like that except to love it in spite of yourself. I mean, you know, this is how you seduce someone. You make them laugh. You make them cry. You move them. You get them to drop their barriers. You get them to not be afraid. This is what it does to us. It seduces us back into this relationship, and I think we return to it with an immense sense of relief. It's just like, you know?
Don't know about you. I'm feeling lost at last. And the head gnome said, for a foreigner, you're getting close, but listen to this. And I said, how's that again, friend? And he said, the glacier rattles in the cupboard. A desert sighs in the bed. And the crack in the teacup opens a door to the land of the dead. And I...
Datura isn't uncommon, right? I remember seeing Datura flowers in various places I've been. Yeah, but so it's also called Jimson weed, and it seems like the law is really gray. For Michigan, it's a restricted weed, and you're supposed to kill it before it can produce seeds. But I can't seem to find any punishment listed for it. So like, you can make the argument that it's not uncommon and they can just be there, but like, most plants have DMT in it. You have it in your body, and yet it's 400 times more legal than LSD. So the laws are really nonsensical when it comes to some restrictions. It just doesn't like practically make any sense. It seems like there's almost an admission that this law doesn't make any practical sense of restricting Jimson because it is fairly common. And yeah, it says you can't have it, but they also, for the life of me, I can't find any punishment for it. Oh, sorry, for the life of me, Pardon, I can't find any legal punishment for it. It's very weird.
With me. And he said, the stranger is always at home. And I said, does that mean that I can do this? And as the song went down, the air thickened between us. And behind the head gnome, the chief elf, the honcho sprite, I could see the tree spirit ladies, the river nixies, and the mermaids. And they moved forward and past me and beyond me. And the last thing they said before I lost sight of them, they turned to me and they said, deja vu.
You think this is the next chapter? Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna end here. We're about halfway through anyway. I'll pick it right back up here tomorrow. Again, still striving for an earlier start, but just doesn't always work out that way. Thanks for being here for a different than normal stream. This was a request that I have seemingly to my detriment put off for not even the best reasons. Some of them were I really wanted to make sure that I had permission. I didn't want to get a strike on YouTube. So, and if I did get a strike on YouTube for watching it, at least I could provide proof that I had permission from the film creator. Very thinky. I'm gonna have to think about a lot of these things quite a bit. Good shit so far, Elk. I'll announce on Twitter and in the Discord when I'm gonna go live tomorrow, or if I can kind of plan it out, I will. But I mean, if I don't say anything by like 8 or 9 o'clock, it's probably gonna be around 8 or 9 o'clock Eastern. Yeah, thanks for being here. This was very interesting. You put a lot of love in this documentary. Yeah, I can tell. Some of the edits are weird and it throws me off because like they don't like really go anywhere. But I think that there has to be like some meaning just for at least the creator then. But yeah, it seems like very well put together. I would have to say if you make a documentary, it's over 3 hours long, you care a great deal. I should have suspected I couldn't get through this in the amount of time. Just I talk too much. But yeah, pick up tomorrow. Yeah, thanks for being